Psalms and chapter 25. This is a tremendous psalm, quite apart from our subject. But I want to look especially at verse 14. And in a sense, this particular verse, Psalm 25 and verse 14, is the text for all of these hours that we'll spend together. The friendship of the Lord is for those who fear him, and he makes known to them his covenant. The friendship of the Lord is for those who fear him, and he makes known to them his covenant. Have you noticed in the scripture, when you read of, say, Moses or Joshua, or you turn over to Samuel, or you zip into David, or you drop in by Isaiah or Jeremiah, or you're speaking even with Jesus in his earth walk, wherever you drop down in the scripture, you get the feeling that all the characters had got together and they know something. It's almost as if across the centuries they give each other a nod and a wink. They know something. The way Elijah operated has much in common with the way Joshua operated. They both knew something. The way Abraham walked through the land and the way Jeremiah speaks seems to come from the same source. There is an underlying secret to the whole Bible. And that secret, I believe, is what our text is saying. The friendship of the Lord is for those who fear him, and he will make known to them his covenant. Or another expression, translation has it, the secret of the Lord is for those who fear him, and he will make known to them his covenant. There is a secret. Let's plain and simple. There is a secret to the living of the Christian life. It's an open secret, but it's there. That which Joshua knew and that which the apostles knew, it is a common bond. It is a secret. Know that secret. I can look back over the centuries and I can give a nod to Joshua. I can wink at Elijah, and we understand each other. We both have been tapped in to the same body of truth. The Jerusalem Bible puts it, the close secret of Yahweh belongs to them who fear him. His covenant also to bring them knowledge. That close secret, that given knowledge to those who know his covenant. The New English Bible says, the Lord confides his purpose to those who fear him. His covenant is theirs to know. The covenant again. And so, if I'm speaking about that secret that every believer should know, that intimacy one has with God, that companionship, that confidence that man has with God, it is all summed up in the one expression, a revelation of God's covenant. This is the secret. This can put you and I into the same walk that the characters of the Bible knew. Now, I know that the numbers of you that are here today, that you are now walking in the results of being in covenant. If you're born again, you are now walking in the results of being in covenant. But let's say if you're an average group of people, as high as 80% do not understand that. And so we receive all the benefits of covenant, but we don't know why we have them. It's as if God, just on a whim, said, hey, let's bless this person. And so my walk with God becomes a hit and miss affair. That is, I stand before God declared righteous. I am pardoned of all my sin. I am accepted as if I were Jesus himself. What's the foundation for saying that? How can I be absolutely sure of that? How can I be immovable on that truth even when I've messed up a little bit? You see, if I don't know the covenant, then I sway. It's up and down, hit and miss. Walking in the Spirit, receiving of all the blessings of God, enjoying the gifts of the Spirit. All of this, why does God act like that toward me? How does it work in my life? There's got to be a foundation, or although I enjoy those many results, I don't know why, and my life is never really on course. Psalm 103 verse 7 says these words, that God made known his ways to Moses, his actions to the sons of Israel. Do you get that? He made known his ways to Moses. That is, he told Moses why he was doing this. He got Moses into the conference room and shared with Moses all his mind, his purpose. And he said, I am doing this, and this is why. And this is where I'm going to with it. He never did that with Israel. Israel just said, hey, look what God did. Well, would you believe it? Look what he did. They didn't know why he did it. They didn't know where it was leading. And that's why each miracle stood by itself. Do you remember that in their history? So God rained food from heaven. A few days later, they're thirsty and they start complaining as if God had forsaken them. That is, they saw the food from heaven as an act of God. He did it. I don't know why he did it. Moses did. And that's why when they're thirsty and the people are complaining, Moses knows why he can come to God and ask for water. Do you see what I'm saying? It's one thing to just receive of God's blessings. It's another to know why they're there. The covenant tells us why they are there. When I come to the Bible, it is a covenant book. I think in the next 15 hours that we shall show that. It is a covenant book. It declares a covenant purpose. And that makes it the unique book of all religions on this planet. No other religion of any people, any tribe, has even imagined that God should enter into covenant with humans. The idea does not occur in any myth or any legend or any religion. This is unique. This is a declaration that God enters into covenant with us. If your faith is weak, learn the covenant and you have strong faith. If your Christian life is a stumbling, bumbling affair, understand what God has done in covenant and we become strong in God. See, the covenant is not just another topic of Scripture, like we study faith or healing. No. The covenant is the foundation on which all else is built. It is the soil in which every flower of God blooms. It is the key that ties together the Old and the New Testament and gives us one book. It gives you the excitement that wherever you turn in the Bible, you can have a little giggle inside and say, I know what God's doing. It's not just a series of unrelated books. You know what God's at. It all fits together. But what is a covenant? And I'll say right now, it's the hardest thing for you and I as Westerners to understand. Very difficult. You'll see why in a moment. What is a covenant? Let me say, first of all, it is a blood bond for life or death between two parties. So it was always made with the shedding of blood. It was always attended by the making of an oath. It was saying, I am now bonded with you by blood in a life and death relationship. I can never get out of this. And secondly, when we say blood covenant in a biblical sense, God is the one making the covenants. And so we add to that definition that he is the God who takes the initiative and makes a covenant with man. So what is a covenant? It is a bond of blood for life or for death between two parties, attended by a sacred oath, initiated and administered by a sovereign God. Now, I'll explain what I mean by that. You see, in other languages close to the Hebrew language, it means to clasp, or it means to fetter, as with chains, to hold together. And so it was a binding settlement. It was an unbreakable contract. It was never a casual relationship. Never. You cannot have a casual covenant. It was a committed covenant unto death. That's why it was always confirmed with an oath. So when I make a covenant, I'm giving my word. My word is my oath. And if I don't keep this covenant, I am ready to forfeit my life. Do you understand this idea that's behind it? Now, how did you make a covenant? Well, there were many different ways. The more I travel in these last few years, the more various the ways become. But they all have certain ideas in them that keep coming back to the definition I've just given. First of all, you never entered into this covenant lightly. Remember, it's not a casual relationship. So you don't go up to somebody and say, hey, let's have a covenant. Because of the nature. You know, there's no exit to this. Once you're in this, you're in it. If you break this covenant, you're dead. This is scary. This is a commitment, life or death. You're going to discuss this. You're going to go back over the history of your relationship with the person and decide, is this person worth entering into a covenant with? If I enter into a covenant, it is a bond that is stronger than all family ties. There is a saying among the Middle Eastern Arabs today, because they still enter into covenant there today, and there's a saying there that says, blood is thicker than milk, by which they mean you may be milk brothers. That is, we might both have had the same mother and had the same mother's milk. And there is a bond between milk brothers. But if I have entered into covenant with you, a blood covenant, if I've given my covenant oath to you that is stronger, it is more unbreakable than natural ties. A blood covenant is stronger, says the Arab, than mother's milk. Now let's face it, as I said before, that's difficult for us to understand. Don't look at me so intelligently. It is difficult for us to understand. The idea of such a solemn word is difficult for us, let alone the swearing of myself away to someone. When I talk about a covenant with God, can I put it this way? God doesn't just sort of live together with us. You know what I mean? God doesn't move in. God doesn't live with us in a meaningful relationship. This is committed life or death. You can't have an argument one day and say, well, it's all over now. Move out. You don't have your pal who lives with you. No casual relationships. A covenant is committed. And it says, doesn't it, in 2 Timothy 3:1, that there will be terrible times in the last days. People will be without love, treacherous. The word treacherous is the opposite of covenant. That is, I'm liable to stab you in the back. Treacherous. And it says the last days will be characterized by stabbers in the back. People who can't keep their word. People who will be covenant breakers. Romans 1:31 describes the man walking in sin as they are faithless. That is, you can't trust them. Heartless, ruthless. That's the world we live in. You don't believe anybody, not seriously. When it comes to the big issues of life, who really believes? Who believes a politician? Who believes a spokesman who says that this is what the government says? We all sort of put tongue in cheek and give a little giggle. No one really believes it. We know the truth will come out sooner or later. We've accepted lying. It's a way of life. We've accepted the fact I give my word until it hurts me, then I break it, of course. I come to this covenant that says it's life or death. I make it with blood. That's tough to understand that. It's not natural even to the human race, even though we do find this in many, many other parts of the world, but it's still not natural to them. I'm too self-centered for that. To give myself away to you for life or death? Why should I? Can I put it this way? The more I study covenant, the more I realize that undying loyalty, absolute faithfulness to my word, that is covenant keeping, is the way God is. And when people break covenant, it seems that all of God gets mad because I have touched the very heart of God. In Amos 1:9 it says, and he's speaking of the cities of Tyre and Sidon, he says, I will not revoke Tyre's punishment. Why, God? Why are you going to punish Tyre? It says, because they did not remember the covenant of brotherhood. That is, Tyre had broken covenant with somebody. God says, then I'm sorry, but I've got to punish you. There's the most amazing story in Joshua 9. Don't turn to it now, but certainly read it later. Do you remember Joshua was sent into the land of Canaan, and because Canaan had sinned itself into judgment, Joshua and the Israelites became the sword of God's wrath to the people. And they come, and God's mandate was to destroy the inhabitants of Canaan. Do you remember that? Well, do you remember the Gibeonites? Here's Joshua. His whole encampment is here. Just down the road, turn left, turn right, and over the mountain were the Gibeonites. The Gibeonites heard that Joshua had arrived, and they knew what he was there for, and they quickly get a plan. They get their leaders of the tribe. They put on old sandals, ragged, worn-out clothes. They put bread in the sacks that's gone moldy, and they send them over the mountain, and they come staggering into Joshua's camp. And they said, we've heard of you, and that God is with you, and we have come from a far country. Lies, they're just down the road, next village. They said, we've come from a far country. We want to make covenant with you. And Joshua foolishly did not inquire of the Lord. And they made a brief discussion with the elders of the tribe, and they entered into a blood covenant with the Gibeonites. The Gibeonites shook hands all around and said, thank you very much. And they go off home over the mountain. Well, the other tribes in Canaan heard about that. And they knew that now Joshua would never touch the Gibeonites, even though he'd been tricked into it. And so they decide to gang up on the Gibeonites. And here they move down. They're mad with little Gibeon. Gibeon sends a telegram to Joshua and says, hey, remember, we're in covenant together. Down the road, turn right, turn left, and you'll find us. And all the other tribes of Canaan are ganging up on us. We're your blood brothers. Come and save us. That was the first that Joshua knew that he'd been tricked. Here, now get this picture, will you? Number one, he's been lied to. An absolute out-and-out lie. Number two, God had sent Joshua to wipe out the Gibeonites, among others. They tricked him. He's in covenant. What will he do? He said, we are in covenant. I'm stuck. I have to go to their aid. I have to stand by them. And you know something? God said, you're absolutely right. God was saying, I have never broken my word to anybody. You do the same. And Joshua went down and stood with those liars, trickerers. And God said, I will stand by this covenant that you made. And the greatest miracle of the Old Testament happened to protect the Gibeonites. That's the day Joshua said to the sun, stand still. And it stood still until he'd fought the battle. Does that say something to you? God says, even though you were tricked into it, even though you were lied to, a covenant cannot be broken. It is irrevocable. And if you follow on through the Old Testament, Saul, many years later, Saul the king broke that covenant. And God moved in on Saul and said, avenge the blood of those Gibeonites. God says, that's my heart. You see what God's saying? A covenant, that's the way God is. He said it's a life and death matter. It's not casual. If you've given your word, it cannot be broken. God said, that's the way I am. So you understand, you make a decision. We enter into covenant. Solemn, sacred, for life, for death. And if I break it, I die. How do we do it? Well, we'll assume there's two tribes. Tribe A, tribe B. You are wise. You read. You're philosophers. Mind you, if anybody ever tries to attack you, forget it. All you can do is lift a pen. You don't know what swords were made for. You, tribe B, bunch of savages. You're tough. You're rough. You know how to handle weapons. But most of you can't read. You've never seen what it is to study. And so you make a lot of foolish decisions. If only you two could get together. Because they need your sword and you need their brains. A covenant shall be made. What do we do then? We need a representative. Somebody who will be tribe A. Someone who will embody everything tribe B is. The covenant representative becomes the whole tribe. And what happens to that representative happens to everybody. And so they come. And with tribe A on this side, tribe B watching, the two representatives come together. And flanked in open sight are the elders of the tribe. The first act of covenant is an exchange of weapons. Because they're saying, my strength I give to you. Because when this tribe gives them their weapons, it's quite useless. They might as well have kept them. Because they don't know how to use them anyway. But they're saying, I exchange my strengths. They usually would take off their coat and give that too. For the coat is the embodiment of who you are. You know a policeman by the way he dresses. You know a doctor by the way he dresses. And so it is that they said, I give my coat. That is who I am. I give all that I am. I give my strength, my person. We exchange. That was the first act of saying what the word covenant means. Then the covenant sacrifice is brought, an animal. In Bible days, it was usually a young bull, a calf. And there the animal was taken and killed and then split down the middle. There it lay, two bloody halves, a pool of blood between the pieces. And then the two representatives embodying the two tribes would walk into that path of blood. They would walk through it in a long figure 8. I wonder sometimes if that is where our symbol for infinity came from. For they were saying to infinity, I give myself to you. And so the two would walk through the pieces. And as they walked through, they would end up standing in the blood between the pieces, looking at each other. It was a dramatic way of saying again, this is not a casual passing relationship. It is a relationship to life, all of life. And if it is broken, I will die, even as this animal has died. I stand in the very bowels of death, and I say, unto death I make my word. It's interesting that the word for covenant in the Hebrew language means to cut, to cut. In fact, just if you say, I cut my finger, you use that word. So every time you cut anything, you remembered covenant. For it was impossible to make a covenant without the shedding of blood. I look at that dead animal, and I hear them saying, I will keep this covenant even if it kills me. And if I break it, then I forfeit my life, even as this animal is dead. To shed blood in Bible days, the blood meant life. To shed blood was a judgment on life. So the idea of covenant is a loyalty on the pain of death. Never leave you, never forsake you. If I do, then I'm dead. Once entered into, if the covenant is broken, nothing less than blood shedding can relieve that obligation. I keep saying, do you get this? Do you feel this? The solemnity, the sacredness, the awe-inspiringness. Then they would read the terms of the covenant. That is, what will tribe A do for tribe B? They would read the list of all that they can do, their wisdom, their ability to study, how they can make decisions. They would read, say, we'll be this to you. They would read off all their weapons and say, this is my strength, this I will be to you. It was written out. It was signed by the two representatives, sealed before witnesses. If there was any dispute, they'd go back to the document. And then there would be the cutting of the representatives. There are more than one way to do it. I discover new ways every time I travel. One way was to cut the palm, right across the palm, a deep gash. And the blood would fill the palm. And then they would bring their two right hands together. Did you know that's why here in the West we shake hands? Did you know that? When covenants are made, the handshake is a handful of blood. And you mingle the bloods together. And so when you say, God bless you, you are saying, may God bless you through me, even if it kills me to do it. And if I am not a blessing to you, and if I do not keep the terms of covenant, may I die. That's a handshake. God speaks of this in Isaiah 49, verse 16. God says, I have graven thee upon the palms of my hand. Do you remember that verse? I've graven you on the palms of my hand. That was it, the cutting of the hand. Or another way of doing it was the cutting of the wrist right there. That was the most usual way. The wrist was cut, and you'd raise that right arm, and the blood would pour down your arm. The arm in the Bible is always the symbol of strength. You lift it toward God because you are swearing before your God that I give you my strength, my arm. And if I don't, may my blood be shed. And I will give you my strength. I will be all you need me to be, even if it kills me. And then they would bring the two bleeding wrists together, and the bloods would mingle, and they were blood brothers. Or again, that's mentioned. God says in Isaiah 62, verse 8, the Lord has sworn by his right hand and by the arm of his strength. I was in a bank, a Barclays Bank, in a tribe in Kenya, the Meru tribe. That's a strange experience. In the middle of a real jungle tribe, and there's the Barclays Bank. Looks just like it was in Youngstown. I mean, just there it stands. And I went in to change some dollars. And as I got to the counter, the teller went like so. And I asked my interpreter, what do I do? He said the same. So we touched fingers. And then we went on and did the transaction. And I said to my interpreter afterwards, what's that about? And he went on to explain the way the Meru people cut covenant. They cut the end of their fingertips, the extremities of their right hand, and the blood falls down. Then they touch their fingertips together and say, we are thus bonded for life. And he says, you'll never do business in Meru unless you will enter into a limited covenant. You put out your hand, you touch fingers. And that means that in this business transaction, I will not cheat you. I will not lie to you. I'll not walk out on you. I'll not stab you in the back. For this period of time, we are in a covenant. Interesting. The touching of the fingers. There are many ways of doing this. The flags of most nations contain red. Have you understood that? Look at these flags down here. Most of them have got a bit of red in them. Because red is that echo of past days that says that we as a people are in covenant with each other. We are forged together for life or death. Okay? Then, wherever that was, the seal there, there or there, they made it into a heavy scar. In parts of Africa, I have seen them put gunpowder into the wounds to make the scar stand out. For that is the seal of the covenant. They bear it in their wrist, their hand. It's the seal of the covenant. They bear it with pride. The representative, as he moves among the tribe, he is the living reminder. He has the authority to speak and say, the covenant said this. He has the authority to say the covenant shall be enforced. And if you've got any doubt about it, you go look at the representative and see the cut, see the mark, the scar. It's the seal of the covenant. Now we exchange names. We want the world to know about this. So you're no longer tribe A, you're tribe AB. You're no longer tribe B, you are BA. We include names into each other. From now on, you are called blood brothers because we're family.